It was late at night, and Zhuge Liang was staring up at the sky. Two stars in particular were vexing him. They appeared to merge together when he looked at them directly, and separate as he looked away. Pondering this, he said aloud, "What pair am I fated to join?" "How about heaven and earth?" a voice replied. Snapping around, Zhuge Liang saw a monk emerge from behind a canvas screen. "Oh, it's you," Sleeping Dragon said. "Is that all? It's been 2 years, friend." "I've other concerns. I had this portent out for something vital, but it was only telling of your arrival. It seems I've wasted my evening." The monk sat beside Zhuge Liang and pointed east. "The horizon is shrouded. To the south you can see past the storm. You can see the stars flee to the zenith like birds from a tree. I couldn't help but notice you and your master are travelling east. How long have you followed us? Doesn't Lord Sun have a use for you?" "No, nor you. Lord Sun is your shadow twin. No older but inverse in nature. There is only one similarity between you." "Fledgling Phoenix, if you are going to liken my ambitions to his, then I'll hear nothing of it," Zhuge Liang said with a smile. This monk, Fledgling Phoenix, was Sleeping Dragon's partner in the hierarchy of wits on the scholarly scene. He had been working on and off with Sun Ce of the Southlands, but had sought out Prime Minister Liu Bei with important news. Sun Ce was gathering armies, despite his lands being entirely placated. The excuse of punishing Yuan Shu had fooled many, but not Fledgling Phoenix. Liu Bei dispatched Zhang Fei to investigate these matters, and invited the monk named Pang Tong to stay. Pang Tong refused, but then Zhuge Liang said, "Master, we are travelling for an audience with the Emperor. Think how bright the remaining stars will be when we arrive." This strange remark changed Pang Tong's mind at once, and he accompanied the party to Donghai in Shu province. There, in a court barely fit for the Son of Heaven, Liu Bei presented himself to the Emperor. The lad had a sullen face, unnourished by proper food or sleep for some time. Once the introductions were over, Liu Bei waited for his liege to say something. After a long delay, the Emperor called for Liu Bei to come closer. This was extremely unusual, and was done so only after some hesitation. This was repeated a few times, until Liu Bei was practically within arm's reach of the Imperial throne. Then the Emperor leaned forward and whispered something. "What are you saying, Your Majesty? There is no need for such words. What could I have done to give you the impression of one who would dare listen?" Liu Bei blustered, shuffling backwards. "Please, Imperial Uncle, I beg of you. You are the true Emperor of the Han," the Emperor sobbed. The court now mirrored Liu Bei's shock, and guards dragged Liu Bei away amid a muffled uproar. The Emperor left his throne and could not be convinced to return. In the city guest house, Liu Bei told Zhuge Liang what had happened. Zhuge Liang simply laughed. "And what traitor dares disobey the will of the Emperor?" he said. "Even the most base scoundrel would never dare hear such talk. The Son of Heaven is merely unwell," Liu Bei insisted. "And the remedy for that is as clear as the only road through the mountain. Do not joke about this." "I did not, nor did the Emperor. Please, I cannot even think of it. Does not the Son of Heaven have skills beyond our reckoning?" "He does not." Liu Bei looked at Zhuge Liang in shock. The scholar quickly went on. "At the summit of the tallest mountain, one touches the bottom of the sky. At the furthest height of the sky, one touches the gateway to heaven. Atop the mountain, men pass you up. Atop the sky, the Emperor pulls you up. Thus, given the achievements and knowledge of those you have gathered, a transition is possible. But is it desirable? The Emperor sees it so. His branch has withered in the winter, while yours buds in spring. The empire of the Liu family awaits its renewal on the 2-century cycle, just as it did in the time of Emperor Guangwu. If the deeds of your ancestors stand for the past, the strength of your vassals the present, and the will of the Emperor and stars for the future, who can deny that to assume your duty would be to satisfy past, present, and future all together? What other path is even worthy of consideration?" Liu Bei had no retort. For 10 days he refused to answer the Emperor's summons. For 10 more days he went to the court and refused the emperor's request, refusing to hear it more than once per day. Then, on the 21st day, he said, "From kin to kin I understand His Majesty's heartfelt words. Yet who could dare seize his rightful place? If I am to assume his burden, let it be where I stand already and nowhere else." The emperor had his throne moved to beside Liu Bei in the centre of the hall. 3 watch bells passed before the Prime Minister was convinced to sit, watched silently by the court officials. His hand came to rest on the Imperial seal, ensconced in the arm of the throne. He was Prime Minister no more in that instant. Liu Shi practically thrust the various other Imperial regalia upon Liu Bei, and this time Liu Bei made no performance of refusal. The officials squeezed together at the end of the hall so that none were behind the throne. They bowed and gave their oaths, teary-eyed. "I declare the beginning of a new era," Liu Bei called. "Although I am not worthy, heaven and earth have begged me to renew the Han. Thus, let the era of Eastern Wind be declared." Zhuge Liang appeared from around the door, introduced himself, then said, "All officials of all stations from across the empire must return here to the court to confirm their mandate for the new era. Let it be known." Zhuge Liang himself was appointed as Liu Bei's replacement in the office of Prime Minister, to great outrage, for Sleeping Dragon was only a teenager, despite his soaring reputation. Of course, this outrage was kept well away from the new emperor himself. The reaction from the rest of the empire was mixed. Those who had fallen in with Prime Minister Liu Bei mostly did the same with so-called Emperor Dongfeng. Others took the news scornfully. 2 warlords who sent not even messengers with well wishes were Sun Ce and Gongsun Zan. They replied to Liu Bei's summons with summons of their own, written with the same characters precisely, up to and including referring to themselves as Emperor. Receiving this news, Liu Bei despaired. "They mock me! They wish to show the world how easy it is to call oneself Emperor," he said. "But they cannot call themselves Liu," Guan Yu assured him. "Elder brother, you are here by the will of heaven. Is that not the meaning of the Imperial seal? Those warlords have only proven their disloyalty with this stunt. Why listen to them?" "Because, Lord Guan, it is no stunt," Zhuge Liang said. "Consider the pattern across the empire. Where armies roam and generals gather, they give insult. Yet where there is peace, they praise the coming of a new era and send endless eager delegations. It is simply the case that a smooth transition from Liu to Liu was not how those ambitious men from the frontier saw their campaigns ending." "So they will fight us, even Gongsun Zan?" Liu Bei asked. "If they are good men, they will not." "And are they good men?" "No," was Zhuge Liang's terse response. It was foul news, made worse by the list of those who had ignored the summons, including Zheng Jiang and her allies Han Sui and Ma Teng. All across the north, the new emperor was being shunned. Within a month, news came that Han Sui and the famous Yuan Shao, great lords in the northwest and northeast respectively, were campaigning to restore Liu Shi to the throne. There was no end to the ways in which tales of supposed usurpation were spun. Zhuge Liang's 21-day scheme was not enough to balance them out. With war threatening to return to the Central Plains, Liu Bei rushed back to Chang'an, and then on to meet with Yellow Turban Commandant Gong Du. The war in the western mountains had to end. Gong Du was willing to treat, for legendary warrior Liu Bu had been set loose by the Empire in the region. His trail of destruction was undoing any gains the people had made in building independence. Hence, the war was ended favourably. However, making deals with a man like Gong Du didn't look entirely proper from the outside. Liu Bei was already suspected of being in league with rebel pot-stirrers, and this seemed to confirm it. How could any respectable loyal warlord tolerate Liu Bei's brazen disrespect for the Empire? On the way back to Chang'an with his army, Liu Bei's scouts hurriedly reported that an army with Xiliang banners was blocking their path. The leading unit was commanded by none other than Liu Dai, former governor of Luoyang and high official of Liu Shi's administration. "That madman, he hangs our house from the rafters of his own accord," Liu Bei said. "Does anyone have any ideas to defeat him?" "Elder brother, as he is of no interest to my green dragon saber, I would dare bring him to you alive. Let me go," Guan Yu said. "In these woods, and with their numbers, we cannot last," Zhuge Liang said. "We should adopt a broader formation atop the slopes, your majesty, before they arrive." "But then the whole empire would hear of us running from rebels," Guan Yu complained. "Brother, Master Sleeping Dragon has studied the art of war inside and out. Let's try his strategy," Liu Bei said, and there was no further debate. The Liu army assembled on a hillside overlooking the forest in which Liu Dai waited. Zhuge Liang made no secret of their position, using flags and smoke to call their foes to battle. Then they waited. Only the breeze emerged from the trees. "Is this some trick? Where could they be?" Liu Bei asked. Zhuge Liang scanned the landscape, then got down from his horse and pressed his ear to the ground. After some time he got back up and said, "They have encamped beside the river and assembled in the furthest part of the wood. Only their horses move back and forth. Messengers, I'll bet. Liu Dai is preventing the troops from moving. He must not recognize this formation." Zhuge Liang had spent the morning arranging the Liu army in a particular checkerboard formation, which he claimed could defeat even a foe twice their number, as was the order of the day. "What's all this talk of formations?" Guan Yu said. "If younger brother was here, we would have defeated them already. Why waste times here playing games? I will simply kill Liu Dai. Then we'll see if the Prime Minister's plan can really work." "Brother, how can you talk like that?" Liu Bei called, but it was no good. Guan Yu galloped down the hill alone. "I'm sorry, Master Sleeping Dragon, for my brother's harsh words," Liu Bei said. "No matter, I thought he would leave sooner. You aren't worried?" "I am delighted. Now my plan will work. I will apologize to Lord Guan for playing with his temper, don't worry." Amazed and bemused, Liu Bei trusted in Zhuge Liang's plan and his brother's might. Guan Yu found Liu Dai's army precisely where Zhuge Liang had predicted. They looked nervously at him, well aware of his reputation. Guan Yu shouted at them, "You came all this way to fight your own emperor, and yet when the time comes you lose your courage? We made all the proper precautions according to the ancient masters, thinking we were fighting a real army. Instead, we've spent a day watching clouds. Even now, when a single rider comes before you, you look over your shoulders at the way to flee. This is how the world will see the righteousness of His Majesty without a single arrow being fired." At this, Liu Dai's officers lost their discipline and charged, drawing the whole army with them. Guan Yu led them through narrow forest trails and out into the clearing underneath Zhuge Liang's formation. Then, like seeds falling from branches, crossbow bolts pelted the Xiliang army from above. Further enraged, they braced their shields and began hiking up the hill. With twice the Imperial numbers, these rebels could not be turned back by bolts and arrows alone. Enough reached the battle lines that the hand-to-hand fighting was still a desperate and fierce affair for Liu Bei's troops. However, Zhuge Liang's unique formation then came into play. The front line was incomplete, with large gaps left between the soldiers. Through these, bowmen could skewer the attackers at close range, and very few Xiliang troops dared enter those gaps and proceed deeper into the formation, for it would immediately render them surrounded on three sides. Liu Dai, unfamiliar with the formation, did not know that entering through these gaps was the only way to defeat it. Therefore, his troops were cut down before the Imperial lines, and he himself abandoned the battle. His officers did not even notice this, so embroiled were they in the thick of the action. Liu Bei rode out with twin swords to battle one of them in the center of the melee. Seeing the Emperor himself slicing his way forwards prompted a vast echoing cheer from his men, who began pushing the Xiliang men down the hill. Further down the slope, Guan Yu led the horsemen to bite into the rearguard, running back and forth between disorganized bands of archers and catching glances of Liu Dai lurking in the trees beyond the battle. Perhaps he still hoped to see his men win without him, and it was a possibility given their sheer numbers. But up the hill, Liu Bei had General Hong Ming at sword point on his knees. the emperor showed mercy, and Hongming took some of his army with him as he scurried away. The organized fighting was over. The battle now became a series of encounters as Liu Bei's men chased retreating companies through the woods. These and the fighting beforehand were not cleanly in Liu Bei's favour, but ultimately resulted in the total rout of the Xiliang army. Guan Yu caught up to Liu Dai in the chase, but Liu Dai simply surrendered and offered his neck. "If you weren't the kin of the emperor, I would kill you now, but since you are meant to be a better man than you are, you should live, and let the shame transform you into who heaven wills you should be." With these words, Guan Yu kicked Liu Dai squarely in the chest, then hoisted his wheezing body back onto his horse. With a slap, the horse ran off with its cargo. When Guan Yu returned to Liu Bei, he immediately prostrated himself on the ground. "Your Majesty, I had the opportunity to capture Liu Dai, but when it came to the final moment I couldn't kill him, on account of his name. Such short-sightedness cannot be allowed among the generals of the Imperial House. Please, if you will not take my life, send me away to live in misery." Liu Bei laughed happily and looked to Zhuge Liang. "It went just as you said," Liu Bei said. "Brother, your honor is so well known that your great deeds are clear to careful minds like his before they even happen. Is that not a cause for celebration?" "The celebrations will come in 3 days' time," Zhuge Liang said. "Another prediction, is it, Lord Prime Minister?" Guan Yu said with a frown. "A certainty. Letting Liu Dai live is the final condition of our victory. Allow me to explain," Zhuge Liang said. 3 days later, Zhuge Liang gave a wave of his fan, and Liu troops sprang from hiding all around the Hanzhong road. Ma Teng of Xiliang swung his horse around in shock, but it was killed under him by the first scattering of arrows. With great cries, his army was beset on all sides by spear, sword, lance and bow. Thus, the news ferried to him by Liu Dai had done its work in drawing the main army away from its camp. Now, during the course of the night, that army was eliminated, and Ma Teng was bound before Emperor Dongfeng. "Go on then, do it," Ma Teng said, but Liu Bei quickly, yet ceremoniously, untied him. "Lord Ma, once you hear the full story, you will not feel a mote of worry for the fate of the Empire. Please come feast with us." Ma Teng was made to sit through the feast celebrating the defeat of his own army, at which he heard the full story Liu Bei had alluded to. To him, a story was all it was, yet he took his leave when it was offered, and thus ultimately lived through his encounter with Zhuge Liang's stratagems. Liu Bei began to return to Chang'an, but bad news flooded up the road towards him. Hundreds of messengers reporting the same thing from all corners. Gong Xunzan, styling himself the King of Yan, and Sun Ce, styling himself the King of Wu, had declared all-out war against Liu Bei. The House of Han had ended with Liu Shi's abdication, they insisted, and Liu Bei was no more legitimate than other great and popular nobles of the time. To them, and the millions that listened to them, the matter of the supreme ruler was an open question. Now that question would be decided in a grand all-or-nothing war. With the King of Yan attacking from the north, the King of Wu from the south, and the lords of Xiliang still at arms in the west, could Liu Bei fulfill his promise to Emperor Shan? Read on. Could Liu Bei fulfill his promise to Emperor Shan? Read on.